Police dug up farmer's field, looking for stolen money, but the truth, unbelievable. When an old black farmer tells his jailed son he can't dig the field for potatoes this year, the son sends a strange letter that brings the police running. With shovels, what happens next? Will they find something? Or will this old man outsmart them all? Stay tuned till the end. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a powerful story. Old Henry was the kind of man who had weathered every storm both in the sky and in life. His hands were rough, his back bent, but his heart was full of quiet strength. He had worked this land for over 50 years, and every inch of soil in that potato field held a memory. The village he lived in was small, peaceful, and often forgotten by the world. There were no big buildings, no supermarkets, and no internet towers, just dirt roads, wooden houses, and a few neighbors who nodded in silence when passing by. But for Henry, this was home. His wife Loretta had passed away a decade ago after a short illness. Since then, the silence in his home had become deafening. The laughter, the cooking sounds, the Sunday gospel songs she used to hum, all gone. His only living joy was his son, Jacob. But even that had been taken when Jacob made a terrible mistake and ended up in prison. Jacob was young and desperate at the time. The job market was tough, bills were stacking up, and temptation knocked. One bad choice, one stolen moment, and he was sentenced to 5 years behind bars. Henry never judged him. He believed every man had a chance to be better. Now, as the seasons shifted, the potato planting season crept up again. But Henry was no longer the strong man he used to be. His knees hurt when he bent. His hands trembled when holding tools. The idea of digging rows in the dry field felt impossible. That's when he took a deep breath, reached for his old pen, and wrote a letter to Jacob. My dear son Jacob, this year, I won't be planting potatoes. My back won't let me dig, and I'm too old to work the land alone. If only you were here, you'd help me like you used to. He folded the letter gently, placed it in an envelope, and walked a mile down the dusty road to the village post office. Little did he know, that letter would set off a chain of events that would change everything. Jacob sat quietly in his small, cold prison cell when the letter from his father arrived. The familiar handwriting made his chest tighten as he read his father's words. Guilt washed over him. He had made poor choices, but deep down, he was still that boy who used to run barefoot through that same field, helping his father plant potatoes under the golden sun. He felt helpless behind those iron bars, but then, an idea sparked. He smiled to himself, picked up a pen, and began writing. Dear Dad, please don't dig the field. That's where I buried the money I stole before I was arrested. Just leave it. Don't touch the soil at all. Love, Jacob. He didn't have money hidden in the field. He only had hope that someone out there would take the bait. He sealed the letter knowing the prison guards would read it before it reached his father. It was a long shot, but it was all he could do from behind bars. And sure enough, the wheels of his system began to turn. The sun had barely risen when old Henry was startled by the sound of rumbling engines and slamming car doors. As he stepped out onto his porch, he was met by a swarm of police vehicles and agents in uniforms marching across his yard like soldiers on a mission. Mr. Henry, one officer said, holding up a warrant, we believe stolen money is buried in your field. Henry's eyes widened. Money, in my field. Without waiting for permission, they moved in. Shovels hit dirt, metal detectors beeped, and a small bulldozer was rolled in to cover more ground. Every inch of his potato field was torn apart. Of soil turned, holes dug deep, rocks tossed aside. Curious neighbors gathered along the fence, whispering theories. Some thought Henry had been hiding a secret. Others just chuckled at the chaos. For Henry it was both confusing and oddly amusing. From sunrise to sunset, the officers worked like ants. But by day's end, nothing was found. Not a single coin. Just dry Alabama dirt. One exhausted officer approached Henry and muttered, There's nothing here. Sorry for the mess. Henry tipped his hat and watched them leave his field now fully dug. He smiled, but said nothing. The following morning, as the dust from the police raid settled, Henry received another letter from the prison. This time, the envelope was thinner, the handwriting more relaxed. He sat at his kitchen table, opened it slowly, and read the words that brought tears and laughter all at once. Dear Dad, now plant your potatoes. That's the best I can do from here. Love, your son. Henry chuckled so hard he nearly dropped his cup of coffee. Jacob hadn't buried a single dollar. It had all been a clever, loving trick to get someone to dig the field for him, and it worked. Henry walked outside and looked at the freshly turned soil. It was soft, rich, and perfect, just like it used to be in his younger days. With a grateful heart, he gathered his seed potatoes, one sack at a time, and began planting. As he pressed each seed into the earth, he whispered, Smart boy, that's my Jacob. For the first time in years, the field was full of hope. Within days, the story spread across the village like wildfire. From the barber shop to the church steps, people whispered and chuckled. Did you hear what Jacob did for his old man? Some laughed at how the police had unknowingly become farmers. Others nodded in admiration at the son's cleverness. To many, it wasn't just a prank. It was proof of a love that refused to be caged, love that dug deep even from prison. By Summer Henry's potatoes were blooming, strong, plentiful, and healthy. He sold them at the weekend market, and the harvest became one of his best in years. Locals bought more than they needed, not just for the potatoes, but for the story behind them. Some even started calling them Jacob's potatoes. The name stuck. Henry used the money from the harvest to fix his leaking roof and buy a new rocking chair for the porch. But what he cherished most was the laughter, the visitors, and the sense of purpose that had returned to his home. 2 years later, when Jacob finally stepped off the prison bus, he was met with applause. The whole village had gathered, baskets in hand, instruments ready, food on every table. Jacob hugged his father like a man who had just come back from war. "I didn't have money to send, Dad," he whispered, "so I sent an idea." Henry smiled, holding him close. "And son, that idea gave me more than a harvest, it gave me hope." That night, under a sky full of stars, they sat on the porch, eating roasted potatoes, surrounded by laughter and love, a reminder that sometimes even the hardest soil can grow something beautiful when it's planted with heart.